think you gifted too, baby. Yeah. Hold up. Bad girls ain't no good.
Alright. Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to Skippy and Ahmed's show, along with me, Skippy Andrew Skippy Clock, Mr. Placino, and Ahmed Abdallah. On behalf of our producers, Jessica Castro, Jason Morel, Miguel Gora, Mr. Myers, and Mr. DePiero. And we'll welcome our guest, Mr. Myers, for our today's topic, and we're talking about heroines. Heroines is the worst drug you'll ever take. Of course, you'll see a lot of drug dealers anywhere, no matter where you are. So what can cause people to take heroines?
I think it's peer pressure. You know, if you see your friends doing it, I think you're going to be tempted to do heroin. But the thing that shocks me the most is the type of kids, the age group they're in that are doing it. I think it's incredible that you see 15, 16, maybe even 14-year-olds or younger doing heroin. It's a big problem that needs to be resolved.
So, Mr. P, what do you think about heroin?
It's a terrible epidemic. It's spreading all over the high schools and college campuses. It's in the paper. It's growing. I think it's terrible, and just the videos. I encourage everybody to go on YouTube and watch some of the heroin videos that they have out, the before and after. You see these great young adults, sophomore, junior years, bright-eyed and ready to take on the world. They get a heroin addiction, and by the time they're 19, they look like they're 90.
Yeah,
and they've aged. They're just a mess.
And one of the sources say that 95 heroin patients, which researchers had researched over, said who entered the rehab program, it says 54 of them had successfully overcame the heroines by treatment. However, some 22 had dropped out of high school and college, and 19 of them had fared poorly and eventually could die soon. So, Mr. Myers, what do you think about it?
Well, I think a shocking thing about this is that, you know, all of us grew up in Hudson County, right? And you always hear the foreboding sign. You know, you hear people, I don't want my kids growing up in the city because there's all these big problems. But the reality is, and I think this will shock people, this is a bigger problem in the suburbs.
Absolutely.
This is a bigger problem amongst more affluent kids, interestingly enough. And it's a real problem. Kids are getting hooked on these really addictive opiates.
Yeah.
And there used to be a great commercial, John, that used to say, it was something like, they would show kids playing in the inner city. Mm-hmm. And it would say, 42% of all children that do drugs live in the inner city. Where do the other 58% live, or something like that? I can't do math. Right. But it was like, this is a big problem, and we assume the type of person that's going to have this problem. It's not the case. Look at Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right. You wouldn't expect that at all.
And yeah, drug deals can be anywhere, no matter if it's a city or a suburb or highways. Mm-hmm. They can be found anywhere. They can tempt people into tricking things. Just like remember watching the 21 Jump Street when those two undercover cops was getting tricked by drug dealers into tasting a drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy that's happening out there. Initially, the reason people do it is what Ahmad said here, you know, peer pressure. It's also cheap. You can get a bag for $20 or $15, or the pusher will give it to you for free. And then before you know it, a couple of times, you've got a nasty habit. And that free bag now is 20, and you need 5 of them a day, and then you need 10 of them a day, and then a little bit more to get the high. And
you know, I don't think we do enough as parents and as educators to openly discuss these things instead of just telling a kid no.
Yeah, and most
because no is good, Skippy, until the kid doesn't say no anymore. Right. Instead of just educating the kid. Listen, tell the kid, this is a euphoric substance, right? Because what happens is you just tell kids, listen, you do this stuff, it's bad for you, it's terrible, you're going to die if you do it. Then a kid tries it, shouldn't, right? But tries it, and what happens? They don't die right away. They don't.
Can we hear?
Lost my mic. Okay,
Sorry
there we
for
go.
technical difficulties.
That's okay. So yeah, the kid finally tries it, and what happens? Well, they don't die right away. They don't get addicted right away, right? It feels great.
Right.
Now they feel like, oh, I got this. I'm not going to get addicted. So it's very important, I think, to let people know, listen, this substance is a euphoric substance, but that has terrible, 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 terrible side effects.
Yeah, and taking drugs is a life-altering thing
Mm-hmm.
because it alters people's livelihood. It will keep away their friends may stay away from them, for
Sure.
sure. Most people who took drugs are most likely to be isolated from themselves.
That's right.
So, Jason,
And Andrew, who's one of the biggest pushers of these drugs?
drug dealers.
Besides that, pharmaceutical companies, and this has been a big
Doctors.
problem. For the last 15 years, giving out these opiates, very powerful opiates. What happens? They're at home now. The kid goes into the medicine cabinet. A lot of times, it's not a pusher on the corner. It's the medicine cabinet. It's carelessness with prescription drugs in the house.
Yeah, and and scientists and doctors are still trying to investigate about the heroines. And of course, if everyone had learned biology or chemistry or biochemistry, then you'll have to learn, know more about heroines.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how heroin got the name heroin?
Let me find.
Well, it comes from hero. And the way that you feel on heroin is like a conquering hero, invincible, confident, euphoric.
Yeah.
And once you get that feeling, you can't be satisfied with just feeling
Oh,
the average
sure.
Joe, you know?
Not only that, it's a physical addiction, which means it changes your anatomy. It changes your physiology. This is why people get sick when they don't have withdrawal symptoms, because literally your body changes to the point where it needs this chemical to survive.
And there's no regulations on getting a bag from some pusher. It could be deadly. I mean, you don't know how that person mixed that heroin. So that's why a lot of people OD. They think they're taking an average bag of heroin or whatever it is, and before you know it, it's a lethal dose.
Yeah. Anything had to be deadly. So remember, if you wanted to avoid some drug problems, be sure to just stay away from strangers, especially drug dealers, and otherwise anything worse can happen. So
And talk to your friends and talk to your family if you're in pain or if you're in distress.
of course, thanks, Mr. Myers, for this thing. All right. So thanks for listening to the Skippy and Ahmed show, along with me, Andrew Skippy Kwok, Mr. Myers, Mr. Pacino, Ahmed, on behalf of Mr. DePiro, Jessica, Jason, and Miguel, and thanks for listening, and have a nice day.
Woo!
All right.
Good job, Andrew.
Is it bad that I never made love? No, I never did. But I shouldn't have had it.